They taught us that Abraham was the beginning, the first to hear the voice of God, the one who walked away from idols, who fathered nations, who carved the path for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But what if Abraham wasn't the beginning? What if he was the continuation of something far older? What if his true identity was hidden, behind layers of myth, behind the sands of time, behind the seal of Sumer? In the ancient city of Ur, long before the Bible was ever written, the Sumerians recorded stories, on clay tablets, in a forgotten tongue, stories of star beings, of divine bloodlines, of interstellar bargains and god kings who shaped human destiny. And deep within those stories, they spoke of a man whose journey mirrors Abraham's almost exactly. But this man, they say, was not entirely human. Tonight, we open the vault. We look behind the curtain of religious narrative into a story told not by prophets, but by scribes of the first civilization on earth. This is the hidden face of Abraham, what the Sumerians knew, and it may just change everything you thought you knew about faith, history, and your origins. If you're new to this channel, welcome to Whispers of Mystery, the place where we uncover what others fear to speak. If this journey intrigues you, if you feel the pull of forgotten truths and forbidden history, do me a favor, like this video, subscribe, and join our tribe of seekers. Now, take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear is more than a story. It's a revelation. In the land between two rivers, before Moses, before the flood, before the garden even had a name, there walked beings who were not born of earth, and among them a man with a secret name, one we would later call Abraham. Mesopotamia. The name evokes imagery of ancient temples, golden idols, and mysterious writing etched into clay with meticulous precision. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers lies what historians call the cradle of civilization. But for those who listen between the lines of history, this land may cradle something more. It's here in Sumer that the first known human writing emerged. The cuneiform tablets, some dating back over 6,000 years, have survived time, fire, and conquest. These tablets speak not of primitive people building mud huts, but of cities with kings who ruled for tens of thousands of years, of flying ships, of forbidden unions, of gods with wings, knowledge, and motives far beyond human comprehension. And in the city of Ur, nestled near the Persian Gulf, we find a name that shocks those paying attention. Abram, or, as the Sumerians may have known him, Ibriama, a name etched cryptically into certain late Sumerian and early Akkadian texts. He is not called a prophet, he is not even called a man, he is something else. But before we get to him, we must understand the world he stepped into and the celestial war that shaped it. The Sumerians did not worship gods in the way later Abrahamic faiths would define them. Their pantheon, the Anunnaki, were not beings of pure spirit or abstract morality. No, these gods were tangible. They descended from the sky in flying crafts, wielded weapons of thunder and light, and established kingship on earth. According to the Sumerian king list, kingship was lowered from heaven. Before the Great Flood, cities like Eridu and Larak were ruled by kings for thousands of years. This isn't poetic exaggeration. The Sumerians were detailed accountants. These records weren't myth, they were history to them. And among these gods, two names dominate. Enlil, the Lord of Command, a strict, often cruel figure who sought control and order. Enki, the Lord of the Earth, a cunning trickster and geneticist, the one who gave humans knowledge perhaps against the will of the others. Together, they form the polarity that governs much of Sumerian theology. Here's where it gets strange. The book of Genesis tells us of watchers, later known as Nephilim or sons of God, who took human women and created a hybrid race. The book of Enoch expands on this, naming 200 of them. The Sumerians told the same story centuries earlier, but with different names. They spoke of the Ajigi, lower-ranked celestial beings who rebelled and mingled with humanity. This mingling was not sanctioned by the Anunnaki elite. The hybrids, the demigods, were powerful, unpredictable, and spiritually potent. Enlil wanted them destroyed. Enki wanted to preserve them. Why does this matter? Leave your land, your kin, and your father's house, the Bible says God told Abraham. But few ask, where exactly was this land he was told to leave? Genesis 11:31 tells us, Ur of the Chaldees, Ur, the crown jewel of Sumer. Archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley excavated Ur in the 1920s and found something that stunned even the secular world, a ziggurat, ancient royal tombs, artifacts with unknown symbols, and immense wealth. Woolley believed he had found the home of Abraham. But what he perhaps didn't grasp is that this home sat in a city once ruled by Anunnaki kings. In a tomb dating to around 2000 BCE, precisely the time Abraham would have lived, a mysterious seal was found. It depicted a winged figure hovering over a seated king, with rays descending from the skies. Scholars say it's Utu, the sun god. But alternative researchers suggest it depicts an extraterrestrial overseer, passing knowledge or power to a chosen human. Was this how Abraham received his calling? Did he inherit forbidden knowledge through a royal or hybrid bloodline? Some Gnostic texts, later banned by the Church, suggest Abraham knew far more than mainstream religion admits. They say he studied the stars, spoke the language of angels, and had visions that terrified even the priests of Ur. In Genesis 15, God appears to Abraham in a vision of darkness and terror. He speaks of a covenant, one sealed not by words but by blood. "Cut the animals in two," the voice says, "and I will pass between them." What kind of God demands a ritual so primal, so symbolic? Sumerian rituals mirrored this: blood offerings, smoke, and fire, not for spiritual enlightenment, but for binding agreements between different species. The Anunnaki didn't make pacts with humans for worship, they made them for control. Here's the key. When the covenant is made, God says something peculiar: "I will make your seed like the stars of heaven." This may sound poetic, unless you've read the Sumerian tablet known as the Lament for Ur. It speaks of a divine seed passed down through specific bloodlines, meant to preserve the code of heaven and earth. Geneticists today would call that DNA. Could Abraham have been a carrier of this divine code? Not the origin, but a guardian of something ancient and powerful? As Abraham travels through Egypt, Canaan, and Mesopotamia, we're told he speaks directly with God, more than once. But what kind of God was this? In Hebrew, the term is Elohim, a plural word meaning gods, not one. At times, these gods appear physically, eat with Abraham, argue, even show jealousy and fear. In Genesis 18, 3 men, angels, visit Abraham. He feeds them. They speak aloud. They walk to Sodom and Gomorrah. This is not metaphor. This is contact. In the Sumerian tradition, the Anunnaki did the same. They descended, disguised as men, chose who would live and who would die. Abraham's story is filled with coded references to advanced knowledge. He builds altars in high places, echoing ancient ziggurats believed to be landing pads for gods. He performs genetic rituals, such as circumcision, an act seen by some as symbolic DNA modification or tribal marking. He has visions involving stars, numerology, and divine architecture. Some scholars of esoteric Judaism, like the Kabbalists, believe Abraham possessed the Sefer Yetzirah, a book of creation that allows manipulation of reality through language and math. According to legend, Abraham used it to speak the name of God, a name that could bend reality itself. Is this what the Sumerians were protecting? A man with knowledge so potent it had to be hidden beneath myth? The Sumerians vanished. Their language became extinct. Their gods were renamed, twisted, and eventually demonized. But the memory persisted, in whispers. Later prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, all used Sumerian imagery: wheels within wheels, fire from the sky, cherubim with multiple faces. Coincidence or memory? Here's a theory that scholars won't say aloud. Abraham wasn't chosen by God. He was retrieved by beings who had been watching the earth since the beginning. He was part of a genetic preservation program, a continuation of the Anunnaki's experiments. And the God he spoke to was not a singular deity, but a member of the ancient pantheon, the last of the Watchers. If this is true, it would mean that modern monotheism was not the beginning of divine truth, but the cover-up of an ancient technological empire. And Abraham, not a prophet, but a custodian of alien knowledge. They say history is written by the victors, but what if history was written to erase the truth? If this story has awakened something in you, if it made you question what you've been taught, then please, like this video, subscribe to Whispers of Mystery, and prepare yourself for the next revelation. We're only just beginning. You will no longer speak the same tongue. You will be scattered, divided from the knowledge of heaven. Inscription attributed to Enlil, Lord of the Command, following the fall of the Tower of Babel. Long before the great temples of Jerusalem or the pyramids of Giza, another structure rose from the earth, taller, older, and far more forbidden. The Bible remembers it simply as the Tower of Babel, a story told in Sunday school classrooms and ancient pulpits. But this tale isn't merely myth. The Sumerians had a name for it: Anunnaki, the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. It wasn't just a tower, it was a ziggurat, a stairway to the gods. Built in Babylon, this monument was said to be the meeting place of earth and sky. According to Genesis 11, humanity, still united after the flood, spoke one language and cooperated under a single vision. They built this tower to reach heaven. But the God who witnessed this was displeased. He descended and said, "If as one people they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan will be impossible for them." Pause. Why would a benevolent God fear human collaboration? The Sumerians give us the missing piece. They tell of a divine schism, a celestial war between Enlil, who wanted to limit human potential, and Enki, who championed humanity's ascent. To Enlil, the tower was an abomination, a threat that could pierce the veil between the mortal and the divine. To Enki, it was destiny fulfilled. The tower wasn't destroyed because it reached heaven physically. It was destroyed because it accessed knowledge, the kind that could liberate mankind from its engineered ignorance. And guess who was there when it all fell? Abraham. While most biblical timelines don't connect Abraham to Babel directly, ancient Mesopotamian texts do, especially in the post-Sumerian, Akkadian, and Chaldean records. The Book of Jubilees, a text banned from most biblical canons, states that Abraham was alive during the tower's construction and was disgusted by the hubris of the builders. But other older sources say something more intriguing. In fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls and certain Midrashic texts, Abraham is said to have entered the tower before it fell. There are whispers that he wasn't there to build, he was there to retrieve something. Some say it was a tablet of knowledge, inscribed with the language of the gods. Others claim it was a device, something left by the Anunnaki before their withdrawal from Earth. A black stone, perhaps, or a scroll inscribed with names not meant for human tongues. But whatever it was, it changed him. From that moment on, Abraham spoke directly with Elohim and began to build altars patterned after the old ziggurats, the very style condemned in Babel. He separated from his family, from the city of Ur, and began a mission unlike any before him. Not to worship, but to restore. Genesis 15 contains a vision that modern theologians either avoid or gloss over, because it is too strange, too primal, and doesn't fit the kindly God narrative. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. This is not a moment of comfort, it is a moment of terror. Abraham is shown something so overwhelming that the text says he fell on his face, unable to speak. The voice of the Lord speaks of a dark future, of enslavement and war. But behind the voice, there's more. The Book of Abraham, a controversial Latter-day Saint scripture that claims to translate ancient papyri from Egypt, speaks of Kolob, the star closest to God, and a hierarchy of intelligences that govern the cosmos. It claims Abraham was shown the mechanics of the universe, the order of stars and planets, and the beings that ruled over them. He was shown the divine council. In Sumerian terms, this council was the Anunnaki High Court, where the fates of earth and mankind were debated by celestial beings with agendas of their own. And in these visions, Abraham learned a secret he could never share, a secret that required his bloodline to be guarded, and perhaps engineered. The Sumerian texts, especially the Enuma Elish, describe a cosmic rebellion, a war between the younger gods and the elders. The result, a fractured pantheon. Some fled, some died. Others remained in hiding. The fallen were called by many names, Ijigi Watchers, Nephilim, but the war didn't end in the heavens. It bled into earth. Cities like Eridu, Uruk, and Lagash were battlegrounds. Floods, meteor storms, and plagues weren't just acts of nature, they were weapons. Some tablets even speak of nuclear-like devastation, particularly in the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Abraham pleads for mercy. The smoke rose like a furnace, Genesis says. Not one blade of grass was left alive. Say the Sumerians. It's not a metaphor, it's a detonation. Why were these cities destroyed? Because they held the remnants of forbidden knowledge and hybrids born of human and divine mingling. Abraham stood at the center of the storm not as a prophet, but as a mediator. a man chosen to carry forward a pure line, protected from both the rebels and the watchers above. Names hold power. In Sumerian tablets from Mari and Ebla, archaeologists have found references to a figure named Ibriama, a wandering Semitic leader with connections to Ur, Haran, and Canaan. Some scholars dismiss it as coincidence, but others note that Ibri means from across, or one who crosses over, the same meaning as Hebrew, Ivri. Could Ibriama be the original Abraham? Not a single man, but a title passed down? Or a codename for a being involved in preserving the divine human experiment? The shift from Abram, exalted father, to Abraham, father of multitudes, occurs after a divine encounter involving a change in his physical being, the introduction of circumcision, often interpreted as a ritual blood pact. But some researchers go further. They believe this ritual reflects genetic tagging, the marking of a bloodline meant to carry and protect something extraordinary, a genetic key from the gods themselves. There are rumors of a lost book, not Genesis, not Jubilees, but something older, a scroll passed from Sumerian priest kings to the descendants of Abraham, containing astronomical codes, sacred geometry, and the names of the 72 angels who guard the gates of heaven. This scroll appears briefly in Kabbalistic lore, in the Zohar, and in fragments among the Nag Hammadi texts. It is said to contain the true name of God, not Yahweh, but a vibration that, when spoken correctly, reconnects man to the divine source. Abraham was its last known guardian. After him, the knowledge vanished, replaced by organized religion, laws, temples, and silence. So who truly was Abraham? A prophet? Yes. A patriarch? Certainly. But also a carrier of ancient code. A witness to the fall of celestial order, a chosen guardian of divine technology buried beneath sands and symbols. Join us for the Priest King, the Bloodline, and the final return of the Hidden Ones. And remember, like this video, subscribe to Whispers of Mystery, because the truth isn't whispered for long, it wants to be heard. Blessed be Abram of God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. Melchizedek, Genesis 14:19. In the shadowy annals of Genesis, we find a man named Melchizedek. He appears only briefly, but those few verses have ignited centuries of debate, mystery, and awe. He is described as the king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. When Abraham returns from a victorious battle, Melchizedek comes forth with bread and wine and blesses him. Abraham, in turn, gives him a tenth of everything. But who is Melchizedek? The book of Hebrews, written over 1,000 years later, drops a bombshell. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. This is not ordinary language. These are the attributes of an immortal being. The Sumerians had a name for such beings, Apkallu, ancient sages, part human, part divine, sent by the gods before the great flood. They were custodians of forbidden knowledge, and many were said to have survived in hidden places, only emerging at crucial moments in human history. Melchizedek, according to some occult traditions, is one of these. To understand Abraham's importance, we must dive deeper into the concept of sacred bloodlines. The ancient Sumerians believed that the gods, the Anunnaki, had created humans not just to serve, but to carry a divine code. Over time, this code became diluted. Wars, interbreeding, and divine withdrawal weakened the original imprint. Abraham, however, was a genetic reset point. The command from God to leave Ur and to become a great nation was more than a spiritual promise. It was a biological directive. Your seed shall be as the stars of heaven, stars, celestial. The implication? A stellar ancestry. Abraham's line was to preserve a purity not only of spirit, but of DNA. This is why so many of his descendants were born from miraculous circumstances. Isaac, born to a barren Sarah. Jacob, who wrestled with a being called Elohim. Joseph, dream interpreter, with Egyptian blood ties. The bloodline had to be carefully guided, tested, and sometimes culled. The story of Abraham is filled with these trials. The most controversial moment in Abraham's story is the binding of Isaac, Akedah. Modern readers see it as a test of faith. But ancient texts offer an alternate, chilling interpretation. The Book of Jasher and certain Gnostic writings suggest this wasn't just about obedience. It was a ritual activation, a moment designed to awaken or prove something within Isaac. Some believe Abraham was told to offer up Isaac not in death, but to see if he carried the correct frequencies or markers. And when the angel stops Abraham, it is not mercy, it's confirmation. Now I know that you fear God. Fear in the Hebrew text can also mean reverence or alignment. Isaac had passed the test. The ram caught in the thicket? Some believe this was symbolic substitution for the ancient belief in the scapegoat, transferring energy or fate from one being to another. Mount Moriah, where Isaac was bound, would later become the site of Solomon's temple, a structure said to be built according to a divine blueprint. Where did Solomon get this design? According to apocryphal texts, including the Testament of Solomon, the king received plans directly from a being of light who identified himself as an angel of the Lord, but spoke like a scientist or engineer. The temple was not just a house of worship, it was a machine, built on sacred geometry, aligned with the stars, containing inner chambers that could only be entered by high priests. And inside the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark is described as a golden box with cherubim, but its properties sound eerily familiar, emits energy, causes death when touched improperly, guides armies and parts rivers. In modern terms, a portable power source, perhaps even a communication device. And the Ark was guarded, not by soldiers, but by a priestly line descending from Abraham. We now return to the earliest enemies of Abraham's mission, the Watchers. These beings, mentioned in the Book of Enoch, were sent to earth to watch over mankind, but eventually took wives, producing giants, Nephilim. Their interference corrupted the divine plan. After the flood, most were imprisoned in the depths, but some escaped. Gnostic texts refer to their continued influence, not through brute force, but through ideas, corrupting kings, hijacking religious orders, perverting sacred knowledge. Abraham's bloodline was their enemy, for it carried the one thing they feared, the ability to reconnect humanity with the true source. Every prophet, from Moses to Jesus to Muhammad, dealt in some way with this ancient war. There are those who believe Abraham's mission never ended. Kabbalists call them the Lamed Vav Tzadikim, 36 righteous souls who hold the world together. Mystics in Islam speak of the Abdal, hidden saints who roam the earth. Even in Hindu and Buddhist traditions, there are references to bodhisattvas and hidden avatars. All of them trace their energy back to the same celestial source. In 1947, the same year the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, another mystery unfolded in Roswell, New Mexico. While dismissed by skeptics, certain documents suggest the recovered bodies were not extraterrestrials in the way we imagine, but rather engineered vessels, made to interact with our plane. The link? The scrolls spoke of beings of light descending in chariots of fire. Abraham wasn't just a father of nations. He was a witness, a carrier, a catalyst. The Sumerians knew that Earth was not simply a planet, but a node in a much larger network. The beings who once walked with us may have left, but they left behind keys. Abraham held one, and those who still guard the secrets of his line, knowingly or not, hold the others. What was hidden in plain sight for millennia is now coming to light. The final return of the hidden ones may not come with trumpets or clouds, but with the activation of ancient memory. When enough remember, the seal will break, and the tower will rise again. Thank you for journeying through this mystery. If this story resonated, if it awakened something ancient in you, like, comment, and subscribe to Whispers of Mystery, because the whispers are becoming a roar.